I don't actually know what happens if somebody says now clicks no to the recording and whether it all stops. But I hope you're okay with that because as you know, we're going to have focus on T1 today. Not everybody is able to join during the day. So we've had a few people saying whether we're going to do a second call. We will obviously consider that. But as a start, at least we're going to try to record the call here now. So I have with me, as you saw on my first slide, Greg, who is the head of our participation programs. And you might give a quick intro to yourself, Greg. I think most people here on the call know me, the regional partnership manager for Europe. I know a lot of you, or most of you, I see there's a few names I haven't met before, so great to see some new faces here on the call. And the sole purpose really of the call today here is really to give you some more insights on T1 Rugby. I know a few of the people on the list here already knows a bit about T1 and have seen introductions done before when we first launched it. But I felt there was an opportunity to some of the calls I've had with some of our unions in Europe that certainly people could benefit from more insights into this. And who's better at doing that than the guy who was part of the development team of the T1, and that is Greg. So Greg, I guess that's part of your presentation, so I won't take that away, but I think I'm going to give the word to you. What's going to happen practically here, please keep keep yourself on mute throughout the whole presentation here. You're welcome to ask questions at some point, but otherwise just please keep using the chat function, then I'll monitor that, and I'll keep also an eye out for any hands that you are raised for any questions, and then I'll assist Greg running through this. But Greg, I think I'm going to hand over to you as a start here now, and then let you take us away. Greg and I have discussed we're going to leave plenty of room for questions at the end. So, but if there's something really important to ask for in the beginning, then just, as I said, use the hands function or write a question in the chat. But over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Jens. And can you see my screen?
Yes, I can certainly see it.
Yeah, great. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Jens, and thank you, Rugby Europe, for the invite today. I'm going to take about 25 minutes going through some slides around T1 Rugby, and we'll have plenty of opportunity then to have some question and answers, around that. My name is Greg Woods, Participation Programs Manager, working under Jason Lewis in the team, and my fellow colleague, Nanette, from Cape Town is on the call as well today. So pleasure to meet you all. I know some of you might have seen some of these slides before, but I've also put it in since January as well. So we're right up to date around where T1 Rugby is across the world, and happy to share everything that we have that today. So just to give you a bit of a context around and the sort of agenda for the presentation, I think it's really important when I've done this with other regional associations to give some background and context around T1 Rugby, to give you the narrative. Of course, the bulk of the session will be around the game design, okay, and the branding and T1 Rugby explained. So hopefully you go away after this hour doing a lot more around T1 Rugby than when you did at the start. Also then highlighting the resources that we have available. I'll give you a brief update of the current picture, where we feel the next steps are. Is amiss of me to say, I should have said at the start, Jens has got a copy of this presentation already. So after the call, he'll happily send it over to yourself. So please feel free. Don't need to take photographs or anything like that. You will have a copy of the full presentation as we go forward. There are a few videos embedded in it, and our learnings from doing the whole project around T1 Rugby, sometimes using video through Teams or Zoom type of format doesn't do the videos justice. So I'll skip the videos and you can watch them in your own leisure time, post the call. But it's 2 or 3 included in the presentation, which you will have access to post this session. So T1 Rugby, we launched it to the membership during General Assembly in Rugby World Cup 23 in October. It's been a huge priority program for World Rugby to create a non-contact product. And I was very fortunate to be quite a key figure really in the development of the format, working with certain unions to make sure that we get it to the position that it's currently in today. Basically, World Rugby, we identified the need for a non-contact game, to broaden the reach. You know, we got a fantastic product around 15s and 7s. You know, we don't want to detract from that, but what we wanted to do is to increase our sort of provision and increase our markets. Now, you know, like us all really around, there's hundreds of different formats out there in the market. You know, different providers providing alternative formats, but there's nothing that World Rugby had as his own product. And at the start of the journey, we done a huge amount of desktop research around, is there one out there already that we could use? But it was, you know, and around the consultation that we had with all unions, that they feel that none of them really out like rugby union. Lots of the products out there doesn't really do justice to the great game of ours. So we feel that we had to get into this space, and we had to work really hard to make sure we put it there. We have a group within World Rugby called the Game Group that meet weekly, really, to discuss all topics around rugby across the world. And they give 4 guiding principles to myself and the project group, really, that, you know, creating this non-contact product had to have a couple of guiding principles. One, it has to be accessible and no entry barriers. It has to be easy to understand. Okay, looks like rugby union, and it was an energy towards touch. Now, easy to understand, rugby is a complex game. Okay, we're the only sport that runs forward, passes back. We have lots of instances like set pieces, breakdown areas, very tactical and technical elements of our game. So trying to create something easy and something quite simplistic for people to pick up is quite a difficult task. Looks like rugby union, and I'll talk about this quite a lot throughout the presentation, and I make no apologies around it. Lots of our alternative provisions have key principles of other sports. So lots of our alternative games potentially could pass the ball forwards. You could put your ball between the legs, you know, like a roll ball, but that doesn't happen in a rugby union game. There's very few instances that would happen. So we wanted to make sure that our T1 rugby product really looks and feels like rugby union. And from the initial feedback that we had so far, that's probably been his key strength as we go forward. You know, the 2 words that I highlighted in this slide, really, and it come from the New Zealand Rugby Union as part of the working group. You know, we didn't want people to feel that playing a non-contact version of the game, you're on the outside of our rugby family, and you're not part of the rugby club and the rugby establishment. So we needed to make sure it's a legitimate and credible version of our game. So when we had decisions to make around the game design, and when we had decisions to make around the look and feel of the game, does it look legitimate and does it look credible? You know, and I think it's really important that you know that context and background from the 4 guiding principles, but also from a legitimate and credible point of view. And we need to make it look and feel like rugby union. So this is it. And I think Jason Lewis, my line manager's on the call. You know, we say we have 3 formats of rugby. We have 15s aside, we have 7 aside, and we have T1 rugby. You know, and that's our vision going forward. So it is part of it, you know, that you're not a T1 rugby player, you're just a rugby player. And it's a game for everyone, played by anyone. Just the next couple of slides really is the sort of journey that we went on. So this is not something that was just put together really quickly. It was around a 2-year program that involved around 14, 15 unions, heavily involved in their technical staff coming on board to do that. It started with a members union questionnaire that went out to all of you and said, is there a need for a non-contact version? And the answers from that questionnaire really set this game group project up. You know, we done hours and hours of global pilots, you know, so we trialed and errored lots of the sort of game design and the processes that we had to do, you know, around there. So from the fields of Stellenbosch in South Africa to the home unions in Europe, to Laos and Singapore in Asia and Vietnam, you know, we done lots of global pilots around that, just to make sure that we tried it with different demographics, different ages, etc. on that. So from us, we're really comfortable around that. We really tried and tested, you know, that process. The constant consultation was really important to make sure that we brought member unions on board with us, you know, throughout that. The game design, and probably where I spend a lot of my time, that's the easy bit. You know, that's rugby people being in the room and looking at the analysis and the insight that you're getting. One of the real difficult parts of this program was obviously the naming and branding of that. You know, the unicorn name is not out there, you know, and we're pretty, you know, we've been pretty clear on that. But, you know, we've done a lot of work, and we tried and tested again and kept to the same guiding principles that we landed on T1 Rugby. And I'll talk around that narrative around the name because that's really important if you're going to be launching this in your unions and when you're embedding it into your rugby pathways from there. And obviously we launched it in October. Just some of the figures for you, and all this footage is available if people wanted to look at the pilot sessions and look at all the game analysis and the insight that we gained from that. That was a real good piece of work from us as a working group, because we felt that everyone had a voice, everyone listened, everyone contributed. And we really believe that this is a real joint effort to create T1 Rugby the way it is today. Just to touch now on the narrative and the branding of T1 Rugby. It's touch. It can be played in a touch version, it can be played in the tag version, but it is one rugby. It's any decision we had to make around the game, we always landed back to what it looks like in the 15-a-side and 7-a-side game of that, and we making sure it's legitimate and credible. But you've got to build your own narrative around that. Touch together, one game. It's just rugby. But also as World Rugby, you have a responsibility across the world. It has to be globally recognizable and translatable. So we landed on T1 Rugby. We tested that out into the market. We felt that it fitted. It's a little bit different as well. It's a bit sexier. It's a bit more edgy, compared to what we probably have in our own portfolio currently. And it's something that we wanted around that. So like I said, we keep going back to 15-a-side, 7-a-side, and T1 Rugby. You can see some of the branding images, and I'm more than happy to share when Jens sends out the presentation. I'll send out the brand guidelines for you guys to use and maximize and utilize, throughout your programs. Some of you are already using it, which is great to see. But we got this real look, and it looks a little bit different to what we currently have, and that's something that was really important, for us. So hopefully that covers off the sort of background and context, and I'm more than happy to pick up individual conversations with unions if you wanted to go a little bit more deeper into that. But really now we come on to the sort of game itself, and we're extremely happy with the way that this has played out, and the feedback that we've had already from 60+ unions that already put T1 Rugby into their rugby landscape since October has been fantastic. So it's 7-a-side, played on half a pitch. It's our only format of game that males and females can play together. And that was really important for us to make it really accessible, for all. And I'll touch on some of the key elements, which I'm sure the rugby technical experts in your unions would really like to see. But it's around breakdown, it's around kicking, it's around the set piece element, which we're really pleased that is embedded into this. All these resources that I'll be showing in the next couple of slides, they're on our website and for you to download and use. They're in French and Spanish currently, but I know other unions have already translated them into their own languages to help with the ease of rollout. But just to touch on, we felt as a working group that rugby has certain DNA, and it's really important that this looks and feels like rugby union. And these were the sort of 4 key areas: kicking, scrums, and lineouts. Now, as an ex-front row forward, I didn't do much kicking in my rugby career, but lots of people tell me that kicking is a real fun part of the game, and is a real enjoyable part for that. So we tried it without kicking, we tried it with kicking. The one thing that kicking does provide is the actual skill itself. So wherever you're placing it into your pathway, having the ability to kick in a non-contact format without that pressure of contact, it's a fantastic asset. But also it creates space and it manipulates the defensive lines, around that non-contact space. Traditionally, in traditional touch games, it's very much line-on-line defense. So it's really, not much space there, but the ability to put the ball through and behind a defensive line, really changes the characteristics of the game. Now, as a front row forward, I love scrums and lineouts, so it's really important that they were in there. But this comes into really making it look credible and legitimate. So it's a restart. It's as simple as that. We could have quite easily tapped them past and played, but forming a line out, a 3-on-3 line out, a 3-on-3 scrum, uncontested. Using the fundamental skills of throwing the ball in, placing the ball into the scrum, hooking the ball in the scrum to come back. They're excellent examples where this could be placed in any part of your pathway of introducing the game to players that never played before, but also then for players that are coming back into the game. So they really they understand what we're trying to do. We probably spent around 6 months looking at the breakdown area. That was the fundamental part of how this game works. And we created a situation where it's 2 attackers and 3 defenders. And lots of the resources you see, we talk around this golden triangle, where there's more defenders in it than attackers. So that obviously automatically helps the attackers in this space. So we're always creating overload situations to do that. And we spent lots of analysis time looking about the sort of flow of the game to make sure that you do that. So every breakdown area, instead of putting the ball on the floor and putting it through your legs and running back 5-10 meters, which we don't do in 15 aside and 7-a-side rugby, we actually create a breakdown area, on that. The ball is kept off the floor, which is great for if you're playing a game in grass or in concrete or in sports halls or on beaches. It's a sport that can be played above that. So, please have a look at the videos around the breakdown area online. It explains it really well, and it makes the game really exciting from an attacking point of view. I put this slide in really. It's a breakdown of the rules, but the bit I want to draw your attention to really is the bit on the right. So we have our game on flexibility across our 15s and 7s games now in the community rugby space, where you can match numbers, you can fix the sort of pitch sizes, etc. So we want to make it have a global feel, but a bit of local flexibility towards that, so it can be played in touch and tag. Some countries said to us that potentially we could go a one-on-one line-out contest with no lift. The breakdown area, if the 3 defenders are in before the 2 attackers go in, could we potentially turn the ball over in a breakdown like it happens in a normal 15-a-side or 7-a-side game of rugby? It could have 2 players having 2 touches before stopping. But, from our point of view, we've created a core set of rules, which is T1 rugby. But you have the ability and power then to flex to suit your environment, which I think is really forward-thinking and a really adaptive approach that we've taken. So take some time to have a look at those game on and some of that. As an example, the breakdown area contest, if you put that in, the speed of the game is so much quicker on that. So that's the game itself. Moving on to the sort of resources that we've provided. We wanted to get enough resources out there for the start of this year so people can start using it and utilizing it. So we have the game infographic, we have a rules infographic, we have a short rules document, if you like, for myself that just wants to get out there and start playing. But also then we have long rules document, which is, I think I got our laws department down to 7 pages, so that we really tried and tested, these rules. We have lots of explainer videos and every part of the game broken down. We have a match manager sheet. We didn't want to be too formal around refereeing. We just wanted people to get out there and to help just facilitate games. And then also then we're going to be building more resources as we go. So these are examples that you can download for yourself on the website. I just want to touch on the right-hand side of this slide. Since we've launched in October, unions already come back to us and said that, it's going down really well, but we need some more resources. So we're currently probably 60% in of building a full schools curriculum around T1 rugby. So that will be for primary school age, secondary school, high school age, and university, where that will be 6 to 8 weeks lesson plans with around 30 activities, around lesson organizers, assessment grids, everything that you would need to go into a school or educational setting. Now that'll be a huge amount of resource, which we're going to be putting online in the summer, which I'm sure that you could adapt to your educational establishments in your countries. But the work will be done for you. Every session, every activity, up to what T1 rugby is, that'll be created ready for the summer. We're exploring around the T1 rugby app, just so that we can get the information out there to the people who are running the WhatsApp groups to get these activities running, but also then actually collecting data around that. That's probably a longer project, and we're exploring that World Rugby of how we can utilize that for our unions to do that. Another one that will be up by the summer will be lots of people already running T1 rugby events, through multiple settings. So we've got an events checklist that we're producing that you can download, use, give to your volunteers that are running those events to make sure that you cover off everything. that you need to make it a fantastic spectacle. Also, then we've had feedback saying it's a great referee tool to develop referees within unions, because obviously we have a breakdown, we have a set piece, we have the flow of the game which is needed. So we're looking at developing a more of a user-friendly rugby referee resource, around that, because T1 Rugby is not also developing players and engaging players. It can also help with match officials, which we have found out. And also people have come back to us and said, look, we just want to see full games in action. So next Friday, we're already starting to film some live games, just so that people can see the game in full flow. So, we believe we have a full comprehensive list of resources there, which is plenty enough for you to get up and go in and start working. But like always throughout this project, we'll listen to the membership. And if membership is asking us for more resources or different ones that we're not thinking around, we'll certainly explore and see if that could happen. This is probably the most important slide of the presentation for people who don't know about T1 Rugby. This is the link that everything is on. And like you said, over the next couple of months, more resources, more videos will be going onto that. Please feel free to send any sort of footage, social media coverage to Jens that is happening in your unions. We just love to bank that and to load and to keep a record really of everything that is happening, across the world, and it's fabulous to see. But for us, I would recommend for all your staff within your unions or your coaches, please ask them to go there. At the moment, like I said, is in French, Spanish, and English, and some other countries have already translated into their language. The last couple of slides really is around, and we always put this in as a participation team, really just thinking about the art of the possible of T1 Rugby, because although it's really important for where it fits into your union, I just want to give you that sort of global approach. We believe this is another format of the game which will definitely give us 1 million new community social players. And that's really important for us to grow that fan base, to grow that participation element of the game. We've really got to maximize the mixed playing opportunity, and it's the first now game. The males and females of all ages can play together. I have no doubt, and Jason will be pushing me on this, where does it look around cross-border and international opportunities going forward? And that's a real piece of work that we will be exploring and working with unions on that. What that looks like, I don't know, but I think it's important to state that potentially that could happen. I have no doubt that commercial opportunities will arise from T1 Rugby because of the accessible nature of it and the amount of people that be playing it. And I'm certainly something that you could put in your portfolio to try and grab, but also then just to try and grab some new, whole community of new fans. So that's the art of the possible to bring this game to life. And this is where we're working as World Rugby on that. And I just put it then from a global point of view to a regional and a union. Where does T1 Rugby fit? Now, I got to put 5 or 6 boxes, even more on this slide. But, the easy pickings for us would be around educational establishments, but it's got to be more than that. We don't want T1 Rugby to be seen as a sort of X7s that it just sits on the shelf and it gets brought out when it needs to. Can it be really embedded into your rugby landscape and your development pathways? Is it in a club or school setting? Are you going to put it as a sort of regular activity within those settings? Is it one that you're going to use at a social level that, for adults only to come together and never played before? It lends perfectly to those mass participation events. And I'll talk about some of the events that I've seen across the world already, to do that. But really give us some thought around that placement. Now, I probably spoke to around 12 to 14 unions in Europe already about where they see it, around referee development, around a school setting, around a vets product, around a social summer league. It's all different types of the people who are really thinking around. But where do you think it's best placed, and where do you think you can grow the game of rugby using T1 within your union? So the last bit really of the slide deck before we get into some questions is around just a bit of an update. So we've created another new working group really around just the rollout and looking at different opportunities to making sure that it's having the impact that it needs to have around the world. We've done some huge participation events, which you might have seen through our social media channels around the Cape Town Sevens. and we got ones planned for Nanette's running a huge one in Singapore, and obviously we'll be hopefully doing something around the Madrid Sevens events. We've also looked at some commercial opportunities around Cape Town Tens as an example to do that, and get around all the regional engagement workshops just to make sure, because our aim is very simple in year one. We want to get T1 rugby into every union's hands, to make sure that, like I said, I could have put 60 examples down there as union adaptation, but the reality is where you see it best placed, and there's been some great examples, across the world where unions are thinking around what to do with T1 rugby, where can they get benefit from it, and how can they maximize it. For us, it's, like I said, we got some huge events that are coming up now. We're around the spring, summertime, to do that. I'm spending a lot of time around the resource development to make sure that you've got more than enough resources to go into any environment to deliver T1 rugby, on that, which I spoke about already. We're going to plan some real big highlight events, just to show the art of the possible and what could be done. You've probably seen already from our sort of World Rugby participation projects, our GIR 2.0, our girls participation program, our work with charitable partners like Child Fund Rugby. A lot of it now is all endorsed through T1 Rugby, making sure that, they're all aligned to make sure that we're all working together on that. And also we keep on working around that legal and commercial discussion around rollout, because in some countries, I have no doubt that the commercial opportunity around T1 Rugby, will be huge. So that's a real snapshot, the flavor of where we currently are. And just to finish, really, I'm more than happy, and I'm designated lead role on this to talk to you individually as a union, around T1 Rugby, which I've done with so many unions already in Europe, and if you'd like to spend an hour, we can book some time in just to talk about, what you see the future plans at T1 Rugby and where we could potentially help. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Greg. Fantastic to work with a front row who actually delivers what he promised. 25 minutes exactly. I wasn't always used to that in my playing time. Well done. I haven't had any questions coming up in the chat yet. Now I can say from personal experience, I actually did implement T1 Rugby in my little club here in Denmark as soon as we launched it, and I've had great success keeping my players busy over the winter. We only in Denmark have access to artificial fields where we can't do anything contact-wise. So for us, it has been a way of actually staying fit over the winter time or the winter period. And we've actually introduced, as you said, Greg, we've joining us as well, and parents that have never played rugby before. I think it's a great way of actually getting to another understanding of our game, which I think T1 actually does, other than just playing touch. So well done in coming up with this game. I'm gonna ask the floor here whether there's any good questions for Greg, or any questions really. So please raise your hand or write any comments you might have in the chat here. We've got Mark. So Mark's got the first question. So Mark, you can just unmute and ask the question if you want.
Hi, yeah, good afternoon. And firstly, Greg, I'd like to say this is, for us, it's a fantastic initiative. We followed it when it first came out. We've already implemented it in clubs with under 12s and under 14s, and they're just about to start it as a mixed social adult game to bring new players in, and also to retain some of the players who've left the sport here. One of the things we are finding is how important where we have the set pieces now, the lineouts and the scrums and the breakdown, how this is really improving the game understanding and, let's say, the muscle memory of the young players when they then move into contact and move into into sevens primarily for us. So this, I think, a real highlight for us of this game is with the lineouts, with the scrums, with the breakdown, is the kids, unlike with touch where they just run around in circles, they're actually getting the structure and an understanding of the game. And then as we progress into competing for lineouts or competing at scrums or whatever, they already know where they should be. And I think this is one thing that really should be highlighted. And it's already starting to see not quite a specialization in positions, but more of an understanding in positions. So we really welcome what this has done, and it has really filled a gap for us, because we had well, we used with tag, not with touch. So we had just mad tag, and then we had the structured game, and this is really, I'd just like to tell everybody, this has really filled a gap, and has been really important for a development in a young and small country such as ours.
It's pleasing to hear,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Yeah, Jens, I'll just respond to that. One of the key things that we don't flex, around T1 Rugby, and what I've advised the unions, is that the set piece restart and the breakdown is not up for negotiation. That is T1 Rugby, because to keep it credible, to keep it legitimate, to keep back to those 4 guiding principles of the game group, that's what it makes it look and feel like rugby union. So you can flex numbers, you can flex pitch sizes, you can put some contestable areas in if you really want to. But the bits that you're talking around, sorry, the key elements of rugby that you're talking around is why we designed the game. And like I said, it's great to hear that you got it at under 12s level, but also then looking at an adult level, because we solely believe as well rugby that we just don't want to see this as a children's and as a kids product. This is across all of the development spectrum around, especially that adults and vets rugby. So yeah, really pleasing. Mark, what unions yourself?
Yeah, sorry, in Kosovo. And
Kosovo. Nice to meet you.
We've also started to introduce it in schools in North Macedonia, but they're not a federation yet. But yeah, so we're doing it there in the schools program also.
Thank you, Mark.
Great stuff, Mark. I will give the word to Chris, and then I'll take a few comments from the chat. So Chris, you're up.
Yeah, so I was having trouble. I've switched to Zoom web because I had to update, so I was having trouble finding where the raise hand. So I put a question in the chat, so you can ignore it because I'll ask it now. First off, really, really great. I've been looking into this since I've heard about it, and I've only heard about it a week ago. So this is fantastic, and I'll be implementing it here in Norway as much as I possibly can. But what I wanted to ask you, Greg, is did you guys, because a lot of the rules and a lot of the breakdowns seem to be around the same structure as Rugby 7s, did you guys look into and experiment with Rugby 15s playing so that you have like a full field with 15 players on the field, but still have the same breakdown styles? I was just wondering if that's been explored a little bit.
Yeah, Chris, we, throughout the game design, we probably took 12 months really looking at all different sizes of pitches. But I'll summarize, we probably created a game that was too quick, and because that turns a lot of people off. So 7s now is a very conditioned, highly skilled sport. So, it's really difficult to create a non-contact version, because what contact does is slow the game up. Okay, contact provides elements of the game that provides a slower pace, or the flow of the game doesn't go as quick. So we trialed and error a lot, right? So the biggest point, and I probably skipped this over in the presentation, one of the key strengths of T1 Rugby is the attacking side can control the speed of the play. So you can wait until the third defender comes in. So the person who plays the ball away dictates the speed of the game. So if you want to play quick, you can. But if you want to slow it down, that's fine. And the feedback that we had from participants, a lot of the alternative games out there and the non-contact games were too quick. So take me as an example as a retired front row forward. I'd love to play touch rugby, but it could be too quick, but because we can control the speed of the game, so you can dial it up or you can dial it down by the time that you play the ball away, that makes it more accessible for people to play. And we've done a great pilot, and I see some of the Scottish Rugby Union guys here. We went up the Curry up in Scotland, and we used a youth team. Okay, so quite a good standard youth team, and we were playing all different variations of rules, etc. We wanted to make sure that the game is played at the right speed. So we don't want it too quick and we don't want it too slow. The only way you can do that is having the person who's playing the ball away dictate that. And we just felt that that was the way. And on your question on the chat, we listened to a lot of the participant feedback during all the pilots and currently as people are playing. it's interesting what Mark said. We don't really want to create positions in T1 rugby. So, you know, if the ball is knocked on and it's a scrum, we just want the nearest 3 people to go. What we're finding already, people are saying, oh, I'm a back, so I stand out there. We want to create this environment where everyone's just playing in every position. But, you know, as we evolve and as we get more feedback in the first year, we'll look into situations like that. But it's really a game for everyone, and we want everyone to play all positions.
Yeah, because as someone who normally plays rugby 15s, I can see easily adapting this into just getting positional practice into play. A lot of it is very, very, very good for getting the position, whereas in traditional touch rugby, it is not. There's no Union 15 or Union 7s even positional teaching done and involved. So this is really great. I really like it. And
I was speaking to a country in South America, a union in South America, and they're using T1 rugby as a sort of girls introductory, a female introductory game, because of the fundamental parts of throwing the ball in at the scrum, the hook in, the passing the ball away from a scrum half type of action. You know, so they're seeing some of the key elements to do that. So that's where they're placing it. But like I said, take your time as a union, think where you feel is best placed, and where you think the best markets are for, you know, for that. But what I'm trying to do in these calls is give you examples of how unions are utilizing T1 rugby.
No, this is perfect. Thank you very much for this. I appreciate the answer.
Yeah, I think you've answered Frederic's comment about actual feedback from players, Greg, because you have that. Then Michael has asked a question here from Denmark, and that might be hinted at his fellow countryman here. So how are we going to make this accessible in local languages, not only Denmark, I assume, but so he wants the material translated into Danish. So I don't think we have any plans. Right now it's in Spanish and French, right?
Yeah, so we as a company and as an organization, we translate everything into French and Spanish, and hopefully that unions would take that on board and utilize their channels to, you know, to translate that. You know, that's how we can answer that, Jens. But you know,
but I think we're looking into, there's a lot of AI tools at the moment that can actually help us translate probably even some of the video material, or even countries can do themselves. So the AI we're looking into, how can we do that and help make that accessible in more languages.
And the other part of the answer there, we are exploring that T1 Rugby app, which would solve those type of issues around the resourcing. So, you know, but like I said, that's a longer term project in 2024, but we certainly started that. So, you know, I think the T1 Rugby app would be a potential solution to that.
Michael, you want to add something? I see you came online.
Yeah, it's just it would be really helpful, and if we can get it in our local language. And I understand that will be difficult to translate into all languages for World Rugby, but perhaps the cost of that could be covered locally. But it would be nice if there was some sort of a setup where we could access the material and know that you got to contact these people and they can help you out. That would be
that's a real good point, Michael. Yeah, that's a real good point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I actually see in the chat, Roderick, I might chat with him on Sunday about this, but so actually he's suggesting to use ChatGPT for this, and that's what I'm saying. We are looking into how AI can help us.
Yeah, but still, we need the files. We need all the practical stuff on how do we do this. So yeah. Thanks.
I think that was it for question in the chat for now. Is there any other? Yes, Neil Johnson, the word is yours. Go on.
Hello. Yeah, I was going to say I've worked in the business with the translation, and basically I think you're talking about resources out the way. I would say this is one of the most important resources you can have, because as Greg pointed out, this can be used at the top level or at the absolute bottom level in schools that have no idea of rugby, no culture, tradition. And a lot of the teachers in the schools, that's what you meet. Like, it's a language problem. You know, you can't read it, you won't buy into it. I know that World Rugby can actually translate straight from their database, because I've worked with that with them. And I would suggest if you could just work off that T1 side of the side of the database and just get those translated, I think it'd be great, to be honest. I think that would be a huge breakthrough, and it wouldn't be a high cost resource wise, without going down the AI, because AI is a bit like Google Translate. It can be gibberish.
Yeah, no, I
I
take
think
that
there's
board
some,
point.
yeah. We have people that know more about that than I do, but I think there's some really good AI help tools actually at the moment that are a lot better than Google Translate used to be in the beginning. But again, I'm not the expert on that, but we're looking into it. All right. Any more questions for Greg or myself?
No, just to reiterate, Jens, that, you know, like I said, if individual unions wanted to have some time with us to talk around where they fitted into their rugby development, I probably, like I said, all, you know, 60 plus unions already adopting it. Our aim is to get it in the hands of everyone of the 140 across the world this year. And like I said, keep an eye out for some of the big content creation and some of the events that we're doing to create a buzz around T1 Rugby. But like I said, like even the small projects and using it in different demographics is really important for us. You know, I know some countries in Europe looking at university formats, you know, things like that. That's really exciting for us to make sure that we get across the full rugby landscape.
Yeah. Great. So as Greg already promised, I'm going to be sharing the presentation that Greg has used today. It contains a few very helpful links, and it has some videos that are very useful. Website. And I think, Greg, we're also discussing how can we continue sharing, I guess, some of the good stories with our network here. As I wrote out in the initial email that I sent when I invited you for this, we have created actually for Europe a Rugby Europe development group where I'm actually going to suggest that we're going to share good stories. So when you guys progress on using this and have some good experiences with this, then please help share them there for the benefit of other unions and the rest of us. I think that'll be very helpful. And obviously, if you are not on the group already, then I'll share the link again in my follow-up to this call. So please also use that as a space to share good experiences. But again, if you have something really essential, then please reach out to Greg and myself. We're happy to help and try and guide on this. If there's no more questions, I don't want to keep you unnecessarily long in the middle of the day. Greg, you want a hand up there?
No, all good. And lovely to meet you all. And like I said, if anyone want to be in touch, you know, please feel free to.
Great. I see no more hands, then I think that was it for now from our side. I'm going to give you a follow-up here and then share the link to everything here. So thanks for now and have a good day out there, and see some of you for the reg finals this weekend. Thanks for now.